Hi, my name is Dr. Elizabeth Burns. I'm here at Midway Vet Hospital, and we're doing DIY with InRoads, and we're doing toenail trims. And these are tips and tricks of toenail trims that you can do at home with your pets and hopefully make the experience a little bit better for everybody. So when you're doing a toenail trim, the first thing you need to do is get your instruments together. There's a lot of different types, and a lot of it just depends on what you're comfortable with and the size of your dog and how well behaved they are. So the first one are scissor style toenail trimmers. So they have a spring, so they open and close. This one is a little bit different, which is why I have both. It has a shield here, and when you look at it from the side, your toenail can't go all the way through it. So that allows you to not cut too much off. It's good for beginners, so that way if you aren't 100% comfortable, you can use that. A second style is called a guillotine, and it has a guillotine trimmer in it. This one, the difference between the two is really just a matter of comfort. Then for your cats and small dogs, you can use regular people toenail trims. And these are nice because most people have them, but for a big dog or even a medium-sized dog, they're going to be too small. Then there are grinders. If you're going to be doing grinding, you also want to probably do some toenails first and trimming first to make them short. But there are a couple of different sizes and styles. This one has a much smaller grinder on it. This one's much larger. Once again, it has to do with preference and what you can get your hands on and what works best for you. The last thing you want is septic powder. And this is a powder that you use if you accidentally quick your dog, which does happen. You don't want to be going so fast that it happens all the time, but a little bit of blood unfortunately happens, especially if they're moving around too much. So this is what stops the blood. It's a yellow powder, and you just use that to put it on the toenail itself. If you don't have this, you can get it from most pet stores, but if you're doing it and it's an emergency, flour or cornstarch also works because it's granular. So this is Rudy. He's going to be our well-behaved dog today for his toenail trims. And he really is a well-behaved dog. So when you have a dog, there's a lot of different ways to hold them. Most of the time, if you're going to do a toenail trim, it's going to be a two-person job. Rudy might be well-behaved enough for us to do one person, but if not, we'll have a second person jump in with us. So the first thing is there's a lot of different ways to restrain a dog to keep him from squirming when you are doing the toenail trim. First of all, if you have a really well-behaved dog, you might be able to just give it some treats. You're not going to take those? No. Sometimes you can give them some treats and they will be eating the treats while you trim his toenails. And of course Rudy's going to ignore them today, but he'll stand there pretty nice while I touch his feet. So if you have a well-behaved dog, that might be all you need. Smear some peanut butter in front of them and trim his toenails while they're standing. The other way of doing it with a really well-behaved dog is you can sit down on the ground and put them on your lap with your legs straight out so they can sit in the groove of your legs. It works best with small dogs. Rudy's probably the largest I would do it with, but that is a good second way of doing it. So if you have a dog that's not as well behaved, there are a couple of different ways of holding them. The first one is laying them on their side. And Rudy's gonna be nice and let me just lay him down. And when you do this, you kind of want to put some pressure across their shoulder here and hold their elbow. And then with the back leg, you put pressure kind of across their hip and hold right between their knee and their hock. And most dogs will usually sit pretty still for this. And obviously you need a second person to do toenails because I'm not going to get any toenails trimmed this way. And that's usually kind of our second person. If he's a large dog, sometimes you'll have one person in the front half and one person in the back half. And that way you may need 3 people. And this is kind of our secondary, holding for most dogs. So Rudy is pretty good. He'll probably stay on his back for us. This way I get a chance to kind of show the toenails. Luckily, his toenails are pretty white. which means that they're much easier to see what's going on. And I find it's easiest to trim toenails from the bottom of the foot rather than the top of the foot. So if I can come from behind, it looks a lot easier than trying to figure out what's going on just from in front. But Rudy's being pretty good. So where I start is I look at the toenails themselves. Some dogs with long quicks, you can see the quick in the toenail. His are pretty short. His toenails are pretty short because he gets them trimmed regularly. But you can see the pink part. That is all the quick, and where it starts to get clear, that's where it's safe to cut. Check for dew claws. Not every dog has one, but it's like your thumb. And so some dogs will have them in the front, some dogs will have them in the back, some dogs will have them in both places, and some dogs will even have extra dew claws in the back. So you always need to make sure that those get trimmed because they're not going to be worn down. So when I do the toenails, you want to do them pretty slow. You don't need to do a lot at a time because you don't want to take off too much and make them bleed. And so what you do is you start and you just get, a couple millimeters and just take off the edge. And you'll kind of end up with a corner, and then I try to take that corner off. And you just go around taking off not much more than a couple of millimeters at a time and trying to round the edges. And you'll see I turn my thing so I can get better angles. It's okay, Rudikins. And with him, it's pretty short. And you don't want to cut just one direction because you want to make sure that you're kind of smoothing out those edges, because what'll end up happening is you'll end up getting rough spots if you don't. And if you have, this is a good time to have a grinder. If you do have a grinder, this one has a light. So if this one has a light, it makes it easier. But if you have a grinder, you can use that to then work on the little edges. And this is Rudy's probably first time with this grinder, and so it's a little weird, but he's taken it pretty well. So there's some last tips and tricks that may come in helpful. One is choosing the time and place for toenail trims. You don't want to do it when dogs are wound up and really excited because they're not going to lay there and be still. A good time to do it is last thing in the evening where everyone's kind of settling down for bed, or even if they've been sleeping. A lot of times you can get away with trimming a toenail or two while they're asleep, especially if they hate their toenails done. And then other things you can do, if your dog hates his toenails, start by getting lots of treats, showing them the toenail trimmers, giving them a treat. So they learn, oh, toenail trimmers equal treats. And then touch the foot and give a treat. And work your way up to doing a single cut. One cut, one day, that's pretty good. And just keep doing that every day until you get to a point where you can trim 1 or 2 nails at a time. And even then, if you can do that, just slowly work so you can get around the feet over the course of a couple weeks, and then just start the toenails again. In general, most active dogs will need their toenails trimmed monthly to every 6 weeks. If a dog is less active, maybe more often, every 3 to 4 weeks. And if you can hear your dog's toenails, they need to be cut. If you're walking around and you can hear the clickety-clackety, they're usually too long. If you can't hear the clickety-clackety, they're probably okay. And just, keep an eye on them, because the dogs, especially as they get older, their toenails tend to get longer, and that can cause problems with their toes because they're trying to grab on with their toenails and get friction, gain friction that way. And that may cause problems. So keeping them short, especially as they age, can help keep your dog healthy. That's it for Rudy and I. Thanks for being with us for the toenail trims. You can do more research at inroadscu.org/DIY for more DIY tips and tricks.